No gavel to bang. So it is 7 p.m. and I will call to order the Hingham School Committee meeting of May 18th, 2020. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to an order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12th, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of this meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform other participants of said recording. If anyone is looking to record, if you could either raise your hand or unmute yourself and let me know. All right, I'm not seeing anyone other than Pam King, our host, and Julie O'Halloran, our co-host for tonight. And just so folks know on the line, Pam King is our fabulous administrator assistant. And when her name pops up, the Hingham Police logo shows up. So just wanted people to know that if anybody thought, where are the police here? We're not getting kicked out of our own meeting. All right, we will start with item 2 on the agenda, which is approval of minutes. We have minutes from the school committee meeting held on April 27th. Everybody has those in their packets. Any questions or comments on those? I'm not seeing any. Does someone want to make a motion to accept?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on April 27th, 2020.
Thank you, Carlos. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Liza. All right, Carlos made a motion. Liza seconded. All those in favor, or is there any discussion on the minutes, or everyone good? All right. Start with Ness.
Aye.
Libby.
Aye.
Liza.
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
Carrie.
Aye.
Carlos.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Yeah. All right. Those minutes are approved. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is our question and comment public speak period. For folks listening in, this is the time of the meeting. If you have anything that is not on our agenda tonight that you could bring forth to the committee, questions or comments or information, again, for items not on the agenda. While we're in the meeting, as we're discussing items on the agenda, we will also take questions, comments from the public. But this for right now is if anyone is interested in bringing new business to the committee. We encourage community engagement, and we welcome questions and comments. And we do have this 15 minutes set aside at the beginning of the meeting if anyone has anything to bring up. I will ask if anyone has anything, if you could raise your hand or just unmute yourself and let me know you'd like to be recognized. I'll give it a couple of seconds. All right, I don't see anyone. If I missed you for some reason, just let me know. So with that, I will move on to item number 4, our superintendent's report. Dr. Austin, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to another night of school committee. Thank you for all that you're doing during this unprecedented time. Tonight, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Recovery Response Advisory Committee. The first meeting of the Recovery Response Advisory Committee, or the RRAC as I so call it, will happen this coming Thursday. I've heard from several parents. We made a call out to parents who might be interested in participating in that. And we have over, I think, 20 people who have asked to be part of that committee. We have room for 3, so the administrators and I are reviewing those names and looking for a nice variety of folks who are representing children in elementary through the high school. I will be reviewing those requests soon. Again, I'll announce the chosen by probably tomorrow, and hopefully inviting them to attend on Thursday at 4 o'clock. The purpose of the RRAC is to act as an advisory role to me as superintendent in all matters related to the reopening of schools in the fall, whatever that may be. From the RRAC, there will likely be 4 subcommittees which will include Education, Social, and Emotional Subcommittee, Facilities and Operations Subcommittee, Special Education Subcommittee, and a Communications Public Relations Subcommittee. Michelle Eyre has agreed to represent the school committee on the RRAC. However, we are also requesting that other members of the school committee sit on one of the other 4 subcommittees when we begin working in the next 2 weeks. I'll also say we'll be looking for, if you are not a parent selected for the RRAC, you may be asked to also participate or potentially participate on one of the other subcommittees to assist us in the work. Our plan is to ensure that we include stakeholders in this process as we begin the work of reopening. That is the focus of my work right now. I know that we're going to also give you a little discussion a little bit later on our remote learning plan, or an update on our remote learning plan. But I want to be clear that my objective at this point and the focus of my work is beginning now to focus on the reopening of schools in just a few months. And there's a lot of work to be done, but it's exciting work, and we much anticipate what the fall will going to be, although we don't know what that is right now. We need to plan for a multitude of possible scenarios in order to do that, and nothing's off the table or on the table. So we look forward to that work and getting going. So that's the RRAC, and I look forward to every school committee updating you on our progress. That's all I have.
Paul, sorry, Paul, how would you like the other 4 members to, do you want them to express their interest on what committee they'd like to be on, to me or directly to you?
Directly to me is fine. We can put them in there, or Julie O'Halloran. If you want to give that to Julie O'Halloran, who's helping me organize those committees, you can certainly forward it to me and or both of us. It'll be fine.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item, does anyone have any questions? Sorry, for Dr. Austin on the Recovery Response Advisory Committee? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, communications. 5.1 are communications received by the superintendent.
Sure, thank you once again. And I'll update you as I do every school committee. I receive a number of emails every week. You know, in particular, most are related to remote learning. And I get a variety of those and I report those out. The variety is a fairly even mix with, frankly, some people who would prefer a different model of remote learning and more direct synchronous learning. We have some who are just very appreciative and reach out to let us know that they're really pleased with the work the district is doing and thankful. And I have some actually that are also emailing me with concerns that their children have had too much screen time. And they're concerned about the continuing of the rest of the year with that. And so once again, that's a regular weekly occurrence that I get feedback from a variety of parents. I appreciate the constructive criticism. We are in a very different time right now as we built this remote learning, as we call it, the spaceship hurtling through space, because it's in a crisis and putting things together very quickly. We obviously were not prepared to provide remote learning for multiple months. So we're adjusting to that as we go and learning. And I also want to say that, you know, part of this is we have to continue to learn that process and find out what works well and doesn't, and to listen to the community, because, as I said in the fall, I just don't know what that's going to bring. We are hopeful that we will be back in business and open schools in fall, but if we are not, or if there's a combination of open and remote learning, we need to be ready for that. So I do appreciate the feedback and the criticism moving forward, and knowing that the challenges ahead certainly are uncertain, but we will absolutely be prepared for whatever the future has for us. Thank you. That's one. The second part is I want to just bring to your attention the SSEC, the South Shore Education Collaborative update is provided in your packet. And in that packet, sorry, I'm going to catch up with myself. You have mainly 2 items. One is the budget projection sheet from the South Shore Education Collaborative and the program enrollment for the Board of Directors meeting on May 1 that we just had. The enrollment projections and budget projections for the fiscal year are in line with the projected budget. The financial projection for FY20, so that's this year, indicates there'll be a positive financial balance at the close of the year. So that's good shape. They're in good shape right now. And number two, just an update on Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. Did request that they be included as a member of the district of the South Shore Collaborative. The board approved the request, and the process has begun to add them as a member. If fully funded, or fully approved, sorry, that would take effect on July 1, 2020. That information is included in your packet. Please feel free to email me with any questions if you have any later time or ask them now. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the committee on any communications for Dr. Austin from the public? All right, not seeing.
I'm Sean Galvin. I am proud to hear that Hingham High got their graduation rescheduled to August the 1st. I want to check on the status of the rescheduling dates for the senior cookout and field day, the senior prom, and the plans for the awards nights, as far as where they are as far as rescheduling goes.
Yeah. Want me to answer? You want me to answer that? Yeah. Yep. I'll actually ask, I know Rick Swanson is here, the high school principal, if he has anything to add on that. I think these are things that are always also on our mind. So Rick, do you have any update for them?
Nothing official to report tonight, Dr. Austin. We are indeed holding that August 1st date as the date for graduation. We're working on a backup date for an award ceremony that we anticipate would probably combine athletic and academic awards. And our hope is, if possible, at some point before mid-June, to do an in-person event. And if that proves to be not possible, then we would transition that over to a virtual event. As far as the other events that Sean asked about, the barbecue or prom, those remain very much in flux, and we'd have to keep an eye on the regulations that exist at that time. If it's possible to do those events, we'd love to do them, but too soon to say whether that's going to be possible.
Thank you, Rick. And I will say, Sean, and to the rest of the Hingham community, I am anticipating guidance either later this week or early next week from the Commissioner of Education through the Governor regarding expectations and guidance around these larger events. I think the Governor and the Commissioner are both very aware that many communities are kind of waiting for that guidance and trying to plan and getting some hope that we'll actually have those events. I'm remaining hopeful that guidance will come and that we'll be actually able to have at least the graduation on August 1. So as soon as that guidance comes, we'll make that known to the public. Thank you, Sean.
Very good. You're welcome.
Thank you. Jen Benham, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, it's Jen Benham, 300 Gardner Street. How are you?
Good.
I'm just going to backtrack to the recovery response. My internet was unstable when I was trying to answer a question back then. First, I just want to applaud you for putting together that committee. And will there be a timeline put together for that? How will families get information over that over the summer? I recognize, there's a lot of things that you won't be able to answer because of the way of the world. But I'm just thinking, will there be resources available to families during the summer in terms of social and emotional, and how will we be getting that information?
Thank you, Jen, for that question. Those are great questions. And obviously, my intent when I put these committees together and in making this organization was to create the communication and public relations committee, which really is going to be charged with getting that information out to people, what's available, the timelines, and the work we're doing. I think that's a pretty critical piece. The second part of that is the education and social emotional learning subcommittee, which should get going in the next week too, which will begin then to look at, potentially even not just the summer, the fall reopening, but any transition of summer activities or summer events that are potential. So I expect that guidance to come out within the next few weeks. And as soon as we're able to do that, we know that the need is there for the summer, and we know that people would like to have information. We will certainly put all of our efforts into that activity at this point. So as soon as I have that, I'll give that out to you and get that to you, information to you, Jen.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions on communications? All right. Seeing none, we will move on. 5.2 is student communications, but I don't think Emma is here tonight. Emma, just let me know if you are, but I don't see you in the participants. All right, so we'll move on to 5.3, other communications. Dr. Austin, did you have any other communications?
No, I pretty much filled you with what I had so far.
All right. Anyone on the committee with communications? Anything? I would just echo that to Dr. Austin's point, I've also received numerous emails from folks, parents and students in the district with their thoughts and concerns and support for everything that is being done. I was thinking this morning that a district is so many people, and there are so many stakeholders in it. There are students, there are parents, there are guardians, there are other family members, there are administrators, and there are teachers. And I think in a district such as ours, I think what we are really trying hard to do is ensure that all of our stakeholders are being thought of while we're making these plans. It's a lot to take in, and so the feedback and the questions and comments are really appreciated. So do let us know, and we're available by email, by phone. I don't tend to go on social media much about things like that. So if people do want to reach out, though, please feel free to email me anytime. mayor@hinghamschools.org, or reach out to Dr. Austin or any of the other committee members. But I did want to just thank everyone for their comments, and particularly to the administration and the faculty at all of our schools who are just doing phenomenal work trying to get us all through this extraordinary time. So thank you for that. Item number 6 is unfinished business. 6.1 is to receive an update on the district's remote learning plan version 2.0. So Dr. Austin, I will.
Yeah, I'll start that, but quickly turn it over to Dr. LaBilla in a moment. But today we began our full implementation of the revised remote learning plan. And I'm going to ask Dr. LaBilla in just a moment to update the school committee and the community on that. I will say in advance that the major change in the plan is the requirement that all of our teachers are providing a minimum of 90 minutes per week of synchronous connections with our students. This was from an overwhelming feedback from the community that students needed more interaction with their teachers. And although our hope is that all students have the opportunity for up to 60 minutes per day of direct contact, it does remain a work in progress as our teachers and administrators are still working out schedules that best fit each grade and subject level. And I do want to speak to the last time we met. There were details to be worked out, and people were asking what the barriers were to getting that work done. I want to be clear on a couple of things. One, the teachers have always been a collaborative partner with the administration. This is a true work in progress that's not easy, that's never been built before, and there are lots of issues to be concerned and consider as we continue to build. This is not a perfect system. We knew that we couldn't build a perfect system that made every person happy or gave them what they thought they needed. We have learned many things about the work we're doing. We've learned many things about each other, but most of all, we've learned that we are in this together, and we will still and will continue to be partners in that process. As we worked on when I said last time we had details to work out, much of the work that teachers do and how they deliver instruction is a subject of mandatory bargaining. And that doesn't mean that they are being obstructive to the administration, yet they have their opinions that need to be heard. those details were heard, and they did work collaboratively with us. So shortly after our last meeting, we did meet again, and we were able to work those details out within a couple of days. Once those details were done, we began working the plan and making schedules. That was just about a week or so ago, a week and a half ago. We're still working together. I want to thank the teachers for their incredible work. I know it's not perfect. I know we've still got a ways to go, but this has been an incredible effort. I thank our teachers, our administrators, I thank our students, and I thank our parents for their patience, because I also know, and I hear from many of those too, that are going through a whole lot of changes at home and trying to manage working in partnership with schools while also trying to manage their own schedules and work. So I thank the entire community for that. And as I've said before, the purpose of the RRAC, if we have to provide any kind of remote learning in the fall, we know it has to be a little bit different than what we're offering now. And we have to be very prepared for whatever that's going to be. The work is long, but we are absolutely dedicated. I am absolutely dedicated to making sure that work is done and the district is prepared to go on for the future. So I'll turn it over to Dr. LaVillois to explain a little bit about 2.0.
Thank you, Dr. Austin.
Certainly.
As Dr. Austin mentioned, the next iteration of our remote learning plan really endeavored to incorporate in feedback that we received through our community-wide survey. Namely, two major themes that came out of that. One was the overwhelming desire in members of the community to have increased opportunities for engagement with the educators in their child's life, as well as sort of a theme that ran throughout the survey as well, that if we could roughly take the total size of the population who completed the survey, we could very easily divide them into one of two groups. One group who felt things are going fine, you know, it's actually not enough, we would like to see more, you know, we're sort of doing just fine. The other half of respondents, however, and the committee remember from the last meeting where we sort of went question by question to the results of that survey, who were feeling a level of challenge relative to dealing with some social emotional challenges that were experiencing in their home. They had a number of variables going on relative to sick family members or caring for relatives or family members. We have families who have Wi-Fi and connectivity issues. And so when we sort of stepped back and looked at the totality of what was working well, while the asynchronous delivery of instruction may not have been the preferred model for some people in the community, what we did recognize was that it was working. It was working for most, and the people that really were struggling, we were sort of reaching out to make sure that we provided the appropriate technological support, the appropriate internet Wi-Fi connection support. The reality remains actually that not every student, for example, in second grade can log in at the same time at 9 o'clock in the morning to sit down for English language arts instruction. That may not be that may be a minority of people in the community, but it's still kids that we're responsible for. And sort of as district administrators, our role, we are charged with ensuring equitable opportunities for all of our students. So how do we simultaneously offer the opportunity for connection while at the same time respecting the limitations that some of our families and some of our educators were experiencing with their own home lives and with a situation that took precedent during this time of a global pandemic. And so as we looked ahead to the next iteration of remote learning, the main goal was to provide more opportunities for live synchronous connections between students and their teachers. The other major question that we're continuing to sort of be confronted with is why aren't they mandatory or expected or graded? And again, the answer there lies in our inability to control that every student in the community and every family in the community is available at the exact same time on a particular day to engage in that opportunity. That's why they are not mandatory, is our ability and really our desire to ensure that we gave a level of flexibility. One of the other major themes of feedback in the survey was a level of appreciation from many of the respondents of the flexibility that the plan allocated. By using asynchronous means of delivery, that content is available at all times for kids to log back into, to check it again, to go back over it a third time if needed, to receive materials in a way that makes sense for them in their schedule and in their home lives. And so the model, the new plan also sort of more firmly anchored the district's practice, our pedagogical approach in research-based feedback. What that meant was when we really turned our attention to what we know works relative to online learning. And I will note that much of the research we did look at was related to sort of post-secondary, college or university delivery of online learning. And that's because we do not have a lot of public school districts in the country delivering remote instruction on an ongoing basis, right? So there really isn't a large pool of data to pull on to say, well, how is so-and-so doing it? Or how is this place doing it? Or how is that place doing it? The reality was, it remains, it's only been the last 2 months that we've actually been doing it. And so again, we anchored our research in what we know is best practice coming from a post-secondary environment. And what that really spoke to was a blended model of instruction. And I think what it speaks to is a happy medium, or what I should say we strive for, sort of balance between two extremes. So to go all asynchronous, we clearly heard from our community feedback that that wasn't acceptable to all, and we had to find ways to increase synchronous opportunities. However, if we went to the other end of that spectrum, to go all in for live synchronous instruction, equally didn't make a lot of sense for everybody in the community. And so while it may not be ideal for all, what we're relative to people's feedback, that is, right? Not necessarily in terms of learning. Where we anchored the plan was in a blended model that combined the good elements that we know exist relative to asynchronous instruction and the delivery of instruction through asynchronous means, coupled with the opportunity of the benefit of live synchronous connection for social emotional connections and academic connection as needed. We also recognize that, again, the social emotional health and wellness of our community and our students and our faculty remain our top priority. Our next major sort of guiding principle was that this pandemic, this situation, is disproportionately impacting our most at-risk kids. And so that is something we could not ignore, which is another reason why we were not really sort of focused on whole group live synchronous instruction, because where we really wanted to target that live instruction was with some of our kids who are most at risk. So we will see, for example, intervention groups, or our ability to reach some of our more at-risk kids, for example, our students with disabilities. The teams are meeting to sort of discuss, and maybe when I'm finished, we can turn over to Dr. Vinnis to talk a little bit about the next iteration of the special education remote learning plan. But the goal was really to strike a balance to ensure that everyone was getting what they needed, and we had an ability to provide our most at-risk kids a level of support as well. And the third guiding principle was really around sustaining and maintaining live connections between kids and faculty. Our three guiding principles and 2.0 of our remote learning plan actually mirror those from the Department of Education. And we feel, while, as Dr. Austin mentioned in the sort of the introductory comments about remote learning, we are certainly hearing the feedback loud and clear that it's not what everybody expected to see. But we also take the position that we hear you, we appreciate that feedback, and we really did make the decisions we felt would be of most benefit to all learners. And that was really where our attention needed to go. What's being worked out right now are schedules, right? So once we put in place this, in partnership with our Teachers Association, the expectation of 90 minutes of live synchronous connection, the next sort of phase of that discussion was really around working collaboratively with our teachers to sort of figure out when to sort of provide those opportunities. Elementary, for example, was meeting over the end of last week into the beginning of this week, and elementary families should be receiving schedules in the next few days, if you haven't already, from your building administrators, sort of talking about when the live opportunities will be occurring, as well as the secondary level, the teachers will be communicating when their live opportunities will be occurring. So over the next few days, again, as Dr. Austin mentioned, today was the first day of the formal launch of remote learning 2.0. And so there was some issues sort of left over from a different time period now that we sort of had left remote learning 1.0. So as we look to the future, the goal was really around sort of understanding better the pedagogical approach that we were employing to be really cognizant and recognize both the strengths and limitations of the model on a variety of stakeholders, as Dr. Austin mentioned. It's not just our students or our families, it's also our community, our faculty, our support staff. There's a lot of people sort of involved in making remote learning work as effectively as it can. And so that's sort of the broad overview. There aren't really profound substantive changes over remote learning 1.0. Again, the major addition is the opportunities for live connection. And what I also would really encourage everyone to do, and I apologize, I've also gotten some feedback the plan is a little too long and people can find that frustrating to actually read through it. But I do believe that if you do take a close read to it, it does sort of present an articulated sort of position relative to our pedagogical approach. And part of the confusion, and I sort of take ownership for that, is last week we sent out a communication, again, based on feedback from the community that sometimes our communications can be a little verbose. So in an attempt to sort of parse it down to some bullets, you sort of lose the nuance, right? You lose the context from where those bullets are pulled. And then we're now dealing with sort of a series of sort of assumptions based off of those bullets that our principals have been working to clarify so that there was no confusion. So again, that's sort of the broad strokes overview. I'm happy to sort of pause there, Dr. Austin and M.G.L, and take questions if you'd like. But again, the major change is really around the opportunities for live synchronous connections, coupled with the continued delivery of asynchronous instruction.
Thank you, Dr. Laboa, for that. And for your work on this. I know, as we stated a few times, there's a lot to take in here and to have to consider when putting together remote learning plans on, sort of on the fly as we're in it. So appreciate all the work that you and the teams have put into this, from the faculty to the administrative staff. So thank you for your help with that. Are there questions let's first start with any committee members. Does anyone on the committee have any particular questions for either Dr. Austin or Dr. Labilowa, or even perhaps Dr. Venus? Carrie?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the plan. Is very thoughtful. I read through both the community one and the faculty one today. My question is around the credit, no credit distinction. There seems to be a lot of confusion from families. I know one of the guiding principles is the health and well-being of students, and people are hearing from some, especially administrators, that just do what you can, but then families are getting different messages from other places. Is there any sort of guidance for the faculty on figuring out whether a student would get credit or no credit? And does the decision lie with the particular teacher, or is it a department or a principal decision? How's that being done?
Sure. So thank you for the question. I'm going to cheat and pull up my remote learning plan because I cannot. There are guidelines that the administration developed to sort of help our educators make determinations of what constitute credits and what does not constitute credit. And so forgive me for a moment while I scroll to find that section. I want to make sure that I am true to what the plan articulates. But to answer the first part of your question is, or the second part rather, it actually is, our teachers have total autonomy over the grading of their subjects and their classes. That goes along with sort of academic freedom. And while academic freedom is proportional to the grade level the kids are in, the reality is our educators have autonomy to determine to whether or not the student's work merits credit or does not merit credit. That said, I have to be really thoughtful that knowing as many of our educators as I do, and as well as I do, I'd be really surprised to find anyone who's sort of unreasonable relative to appropriate outreach and communication of particular circumstances. I think what can happen at times is teachers, when communicating with a group of kids, can make a statement that it sort of is made with broad strokes to address everybody in the class, in the particular group or in the class. That's not to say that when presented with real situations that might be interfering with a student's ability to learn or engage in remote learning, that they would be unreasonable to that request. And so what I would strongly suggest to the people that have sort of gotten that kind of feedback is I would want to make sure that we have that had been clearly articulated to the teacher. And sometimes what often I find is when I will get similar concerns is there's been a lot of thought and a lot of discussion around it, but it really hasn't occurred with that child's teacher. And the student might be basing their concern off of a comment that was made to a whole class around, don't forget it's due Friday at 3. But in reality, our educators are incredibly not only gifted in their pedagogical approach and instructional strategies that they teach with, but also with the social and emotional wellness of our students. And particularly given, again, the global pandemic situation that we're in, they're not, I would be surprised if anyone was being unreasonable relative to giving appropriate support. But to the first part of your question, the credit, no credit piece gets into, let me just find it, it's right here. There's 4 criteria that teachers will be looking at to determine the extent to which a student is given credit or likewise not given credit. The first one is the extent to which the student has shown progress in meeting the established course objectives and the essential learning standards. So as you also might note from reading that plan, is as we look ahead to remote learning 2.0, we're really narrowing in what the instructional focus is across the K-12 spectrum and having it really focus on our essential power standards. So what are the most essential skills or what's the most essential knowledge kids need to finish the year with in order to be successful in the next grade? So that's the first criteria, is the progress toward meeting those power standards. Again, because what we're focusing on are the most essential things for kids to find success in the next grade. That's sort of where they're looking at first, is the student ready to advance in the next grade and be able to be successful in the curriculum? The second is engagement with class activities. So are they showing up? Are they completing their assignments? Are their assignments being done with academic integrity, which is actually the 4th criteria, is consistent adherence to the principles of academic integrity. And that's particularly important. And actually, that's the one criteria that isn't there for elementary, but is there for secondary, because again, elementary students are still developing an understanding of what academic integrity is. But at the secondary level, the expectation is that the work they're submitting is their own. They've received no extra help with it, right? Again, so to what extent are they adhering to the guidelines established for academic integrity? And finally, the 4th criteria, or the 3rd criteria for elementary, is the students' ongoing efforts through the rest of the school year to complete remote learning activities or assignments in a satisfactory manner. So again, while it's not being graded per se, when we step back and look holistically, essentially we're looking at, have they made progress toward the learning standards? Are they engaging with the class? Are they completing the work that's given to them? And are they adhering to the principles of academic integrity? So it's meant to be a holistic assessment structure. It's not necessarily focused on a particular grade or a particular score in a quiz or an assignment, but our teachers are asked to sort of step back and think holistically around at this term or this period in time, and sort of grade credit, no credit based on those 4 criteria, or elementary, the 3 criteria.
Yeah, just to be clear, everyone I've talked to who's reached out to their child's teacher has said that they've been incredibly reasonable and worked with the family really well. So it's not so much that, but
sure.
I think you're saying that students and parents should feel free and are encouraged to reach out if they're having difficulty with the work. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Again, we can't, Carrie, I say this all the time, we cannot be held accountable for things we don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So to the extent that people tell us what's going on and we can communicate with us and we can work out a reasonable plan, I think that's the best path forward.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Libby, you have a question?
I do.
I just quick noticed that parental consent will be asked for the Zoom meetings, and I was just wondering if that applies for students that are over 18 years of age.
I think, Libby, you were breaking up a little bit, but were you talking about the consent form for the virtual meetings?
Yeah.
We won't be using that anymore. The guidance on that front has changed, and so the faculty will be going back to their previous practices, which includes generating an excusal form if someone is not able to attend the meeting. But I do hope that I would imagine the community continues to understand that that schedules are going to vary and that folks will make it to the very best of their ability, but they'll use the excusal form that they used to use. That consent form will no longer be used.
Okay, so parental consent isn't required. Is that what you're saying?
Or to attend the virtual meetings, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee with questions?
Liza has her hand up, Michelle.
Oh, she does. That's weird. Why can I not see that?
Don't mean that's why.
Oh, sorry. I cannot see your screens, everybody.
I didn't know what you were looking at.
No, that's okay. So Liza, go ahead. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay. I had a couple questions. One, I'm glad we're getting into this new phase. I completely understand and I agree this is emergency remote learning. This is not real remote learning. But as we get into this, and particularly at the secondary level, we heard the last time that there are some students that are not participating. Is there any update on students that, are we still having trouble reaching students? Are there fewer students that we're not connected with? Are there more?
So I will defer to the building principals to sort of talk about the numbers at each of the three levels. What I will say is that over time, since the first rollout of the remote learning plan, once we implemented procedures to conduct outreach and connect with the students to sort of determine the extent to why they weren't participating and why we hadn't heard from them, our numbers have shown a decline. But again, I'm not clear right now on the total end. So maybe I'll start with Rick at the high school and sort of work our way down to the levels. So Rick.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree, Jamie. The numbers have improved significantly. I think even from the beginning, they were not terribly alarming, but they certainly were concerning that we had a significant number of students who in the early stages were not engaging to the extent that we would have liked, and in some cases not engaging at all. So we've been implementing a process with the help of our entire faculty of monitoring on a weekly basis and tracking any instance of a student who doesn't engage in any subject. And when we see a pattern developing with any of our 1,300 plus students, we've been able to document it, and we've been able to get outreach not only from the teacher, but in the cases that are most significant and most concerning to us, to ensure that they're getting a phone call home also from an assistant principal and probably from a counselor. So as a result of that outreach coming from each of those levels, we have seen the numbers become very, very manageable. And there are no cases of a student where we can say we just don't know where they are or what they're doing. Of course, we still do have some who would like to see engaging in a more robust fashion, but I feel as though we have a pretty good handle on the situation at the high school at this point.
Thank you. Derek, middle school.
Thanks, Jamie. Similar to the high school, yeah, we've seen the same sort of pattern. We have been able to make sure that every student has the ability to connect. We've tracked that right from the start. And there certainly are peaks and valleys with kids, right? They're going to do what they want to do at certain times, but we have consistently been able to track the performance of kids, or at least the output of our students. And when we see students who disengage in a particular subject, we do reach out through the assistant principals and counselors to make sure that there's nothing prohibiting them from doing the work that is pushed out by the teachers. So we feel very good about the level of interaction and engagement from our kids. Certainly, it's never going to be as good as when we're face to face, but I think that we're doing a real good job of making sure that the engagement level is where it needs to be.
Thanks. And maybe just sort of a representative sample from the elementary, because I know there's 4, and I don't want to sort of everybody in the spot, but maybe Mary Eastwood, I know you all coordinate and collaborate often. I'm pretty sure I can answer it, but I want to defer to you. We're seeing similar patterns across elementary, correct?
Absolutely. Just what Derek just said, the level of involvement is very high when you think about what everybody's dealing with. And the 4 of us talk all the time. And I would say the number is tiny at this point. And we are making sure that they have technology, making sure they have other needs fulfilled, and also making sure that, helping with family circumstances that may be a problem. But other than that, not a problem, but interfering with them being able to participate in a course in K-1-2, the parent has to kind of be there with them. The older children, they can get on the internet by themselves. But generally speaking, we have a great plan going, and usually the teacher reaches out first, and that's the first thing we need. And after that, it's counselors, and of course, we've done everything we can to help. But again, the number is very small, very small.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. And I would encourage, especially at the secondary level, and for the teachers who are on, now that we're going into this new phase, let's really try and engage these students to log on and participate, and not lose even just the average student, making sure that they engage and keep this going. And we have to also experiment, because we is credit or no credit, this is part of the credit to participate. And I think we really need to make sure that we're being creative on how we get them to connect. The other suggestion I would have is, as we're going through this and engaging the students, if we could survey the students at some point of their thoughts on this remote learning. We've surveyed parents, we surveyed staff, but particularly at the secondary level, if they're working independently, and maybe some of the older elementary school kids, so that we can really perfect this as we're moving forward, and the unfortunate risk of us having to do this again. And then the other thing I wanted to suggest, when I read the remote learning plan for the teachers, and I read the remote learning plan for the community, and hearing some feedback from different students, I think it would be great if there was one communication that covered everyone instead of separate, and that the students receive the communication, especially at the secondary level, as well as parents. I have heard some mixed messages, just as messages passed down through the levels. And if everyone had one document to work off of, I think it might help. I know students don't necessarily go back to things, but they do go back to the handbook in the high school when they have a question about things. But we've made leaps and bound progress on this, and it'll only get better as we practice it more. So it'll be fun to watch as it unfolds. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you, Liza. If you don't mind, Dr. Lavillo, I'll ask if folks from the public or the community have any questions. If you could raise your hand in the, I don't know if it's the chat feature or what you call that, but under the participant list. So thank you. I see Ray Estes has his hand raised. So Ray.
Hi, thanks.
Sure.
Good to see everybody. It's been a while. Hope everyone's doing well. My focus is really on the secondary level, because that's where my kids are now. Many years ago, they were at the elementary level, but now they moved up, and I have a graduating senior this year. But the thinking and a lot of discussion in the House has been focused on what's going to happen in the fall, right? And I know, frankly, Paul and Jamie, your updates at the beginning of this meeting were really tremendous. They were, I think, the best updates that we've heard, or at least I've heard, in a month And I really appreciate the detail that you both went into with respect to how the learning plans have been evolving. And it is really appreciated, because you hit on a lot of the things that we've been talking about in this house and that I've been talking about with many other parents in the community over the last couple of weeks. The one thing I did want to ask about, because I've reviewed the DESE guidelines that came out in April. I also read the 2.0 learning plan, and I totally agree about asynchronous versus synchronous. I totally get the need for the balance and the blend, and I think it makes sense. I am curious about, one of the things that I did see in the state guidelines was recommendations about, if you're having problems with synchronous instruction, then teachers should be recording lessons or recording lectures, making those available so kids can log on at different times so they don't have to be on at the same time. I'm wondering why, because I have 4 kids in secondary level, 3 in the high school, 1 at the middle school. And so more than 20 teachers among our kids. And except for 1 teacher, we haven't seen any recorded lessons or any recorded instruction. And I'm just curious, what is preventing us from, having teachers record instruction? For instance, I have 2 kids right now who just went through reading A Tale of Two Cities, reading The Great Gatsby. Certainly, reading those novels, those are important classic novels. Those are not novels that typically you're expected to read on your own when you're a freshman or a junior. There's, discussion involved, instruction involved, talking about imagery and all the themes. I'm wondering, those are just examples of a couple of things, but I'm wondering, is it not possible for a math class to record an instruction, to record a lecture where, you're talking about formulas, you're talking about concepts, and you have a teacher going through things on the board. That's recorded. And then there are opportunities, as been presented tonight, 3 days a week, 30 minutes apiece, opportunities for the kids to then connect with the teachers if they have questions, if they want to follow up, if they want to, make a comment, or if they're having a problem with something. I'm just wondering what's preventing us from, particularly with an eye on what things are going to look like in the fall, because I imagine if there is some evolution in the fall that's different than, what we're used to, certainly is there an opportunity now in the last 4 weeks to have some sort of real recorded instruction opportunity?
Ray, I'm happy to take a stab at that. So I'm Katie Roberts, the K-12 Science Director, and just wanted to share a little bit about some of the things going on behind the scenes. So taking a look at the screen, you're not always seeing kind of all of the work going on underneath the surface. So the mother and daddy ducklings look like they're all nice and calm on the surface, but there's a lot of paddling going on underneath the surface of the water. So one thing that we have been working hard on is professional development for teachers. So every day, every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we've been offering some technology themed offerings to help increase teachers' skill set in developing some of those asynchronous materials that you spoke of. So prior to March 13th, there were several acronyms that I had not heard of before, but we're now all very facile in them. Things like Loom and Zoom and AAP and a variety of different techniques and tools that teachers have been participating in professional development on. And so that is absolutely something that is taking place. I have seen, for example, in science classes, teachers using tools such as Screencastify and Loom to model problem solving, narrated PowerPoints and such. And so that is absolutely now in the skill set
of our teachers. And again, an enormous amount of time and professional development went into developing that skill set. I will say that this is a little bit, for those of you who work in other fields, the only thing I can liken it to is taking an endocrinologist and suddenly thrusting them into the ER, or taking an attorney who's a specialist in labor law and having them do REITs. Yes, all of those professionals are highly skilled, have great instincts, but there are just some techniques that need to be learned in order to adapt those skills to a different environment. And we're absolutely working on those skills. And the great news is now that we've built this capacity, those skills are just terrific things to have going forward. Even when we return to the brick and mortar buildings, the bank of videos that we now have developed will certainly serve our students well as review and refresher materials once we are back in the brick and mortar building.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Thank you. Carlos, I saw your hand up, but I don't know if you still, but it's not up now. Did you still have a question?
No, I was just testing the feature.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Oh, yep, Mary, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up with one other thing that may or may not be helpful. And Ray can speak to this only because of the Tale of Two Cities piece, and Gatsby too, but especially Tale of Two Cities. I'm thinking, I know that I have seen just in reviewing lesson plans, at least, I don't know, I'd have to say somewhere in the area of like 8 or 9 anyway, instructional videos for the humanities kids about Tale of Two Cities. And I'm wondering if sometimes they're sort of in the weekly lesson plans that go out to parents, but sometimes they're, depending on how the teachers post them, might be embedded in the classroom themselves. So that might be a place where you're seeing the overview of the week, but not the Loom videos that have been embedded in the teachers' plans. So just a suggestion maybe, and I can help locate those too if that's tricky. But sometimes I think in the overview email that teachers send out, depending on who the student has, but I know especially the humanities team has been sharing Loom videos, which has been great because there's been ways of sort of targeting efforts across, the different lesson plans that way. So that I could help point people toward if they have specific questions about English.
Yeah, if I can add one more piece, Michelle, too, about the technology piece. Since we started and immediately after we went out on the 13th, so the week of the 16th, we've had 2 educators in particular in the district who have dedicated, I think we're about 250 combined hours above and beyond the regular jobs. I mean, literally 250 hours combined between the 2 of them, providing professional development to our teachers and trying to get them up to speed very quickly on a very different mode of delivery of instruction. And so while I understand it's not perfect right now, they've really, and I've heard from so many teachers on a regular basis who tell me they've increased their skill set tenfold in a very, very short period of time. And I actually participated in some of those as well, just because I wanted to learn how to do Loom and Google Classroom. And it's been fascinating. They did a phenomenal job. And our teachers have really gone outside their comfort zone. And as I said, it's not perfect, but they've really enhanced their own skills. And whether or not we go back, and hopefully we do go back to the classroom, those skills will never be lost. And I think we need to continue to hone those so we are ready for a new normal come fall.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing anyone else with their hand raised, but if you do have a comment or question, let me know. Dr. Jamie, do you have anything else you want to add to the discussion of the remote learning plan, or Dr. Vinnis?
I don't. I feel like that was the goal was to give everybody a sort of a broad stroke overview and be able to answer any lingering questions there might be. Again, we are receiving the feedback that's coming in. We appreciate it. We are working to incorporate where we can and then be thoughtful where we can't to sort of to understand the limitations that might exist that sort of prevent something from happening. Sometimes we can think in the abstract, well, why don't this just do this? without really understanding the multiple implications, right? And sort of that to sort of fall with that idea. But no idea is being sort of snubbed off or sort of ignored. We are listening with both ears to everybody's feedback.
Thank you. Sorry, I see Libby has her hand raised. So Libby, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So I was having trouble finding the raise your hand.
Oh, no.
So I know, Jamie, at one point you said you're still having the teachers work out their schedules with each other. And I'm thinking about the secondary level, especially because I'm senior, and I'm having trouble visualizing how he's going to have 60 minutes of opportunity a day with the faculty, and how the teachers are going to work that out. Like, I mean, how many teachers a day, or is it just one teacher a day? And I understand if you don't have the details on this yet, but I'm also like struggling as a parent to try to figure out, like, okay, but how much do I push him to participate in that? Because as far as he's concerned, he's done. Like, I mean, the AP tests are done, and he's like checking out. So I don't know what to do.
I'm
sorry.
Sure, no problem. There's something to be sorry about. No worries. I think part of the challenge for me as the assistant superintendent is sort of identifying 1,300 plus individual schedules and what each of those individual students will sort of experience. I think the reality is it's not, and I think the other part to keep in mind is the synchronous connections are not solely with our classroom teachers, right? So it could be a guidance lecture that they have an opportunity for. So there's not a direct, and I think that's a great question to sort of maybe highlight a point of clarity. It's first of all, roughly 60 minutes over the course of a week when you average out the total amount of time that will be allocated. And I think the other part is it's not just the teacher, because that teacher's 90 minutes sort of in a week for a secondary teacher might be spread across 4 or 5 sections of classes. All right, but what we're saying is sort of in sort of sum, when you take the totality of the classroom teachers, coupled with our auxiliary service providers, there could be special education services being implemented and provided. There could be the support of guidance counselors or guidance assemblies or topics for discussion from guidance counselors. So there's really no one way that it can look. They're really designed to be guidelines around sort of, you can expect about this much time in a particular week. And particularly as a senior, Libby, I'm not going to pretend to be able to answer that question for you. I might defer to Mr. Swanson, our venerable high school principal, who has far more experience dealing with seniors than I do. But I think your point's well taken. I think and again, that goes back to our earlier point around these opportunities are not being required of kids. They're simply opportunities for them to engage. And so we've heard from families who want us to make it mandatory. Why don't you just make them go or have it be a part of the grade or the credit, no credit? And for all the reasons we already talked about, that's really challenging for us to do. And so, Rick, I might defer to you or any of our directors who are experienced secondary educators to sort of give your perspectives on the extent to which a senior not to single out the senior wiki, but recall. But in general, generally speaking about seniors, what advice might you give to a parent questioning the extent to which a senior should be engaged?
Sure. Well, I guess I don't mind singling out the senior Lewicki, because he probably would like the advice I'm about to give. You know, I'm looking at the calendar and thinking that if none of us had ever heard of coronavirus, tomorrow would have been the last full day of school for seniors. And if there's any silver lining, you know, school administrators don't have to supervise that lunchroom tomorrow between 11 and 12:30 when the seniors are in there for the very last time. So they would be very close to checking out altogether. You know, we would be getting into half days later this week. They would have been having their barbecue later this week. as it is now, they're engaged in senior service week. So all they have left right now is this one project for them to do this week. So they are pretty close to finished here. Unless there's makeup work, they're very much near the end. So I would congratulate him on a tremendous high school career, and there's a lot for him to be proud of. So I would say that to all of our seniors too. They are so close to the finish line that they should be applauded. And I'm sorry that we're not able to see them in person, face to face, but can assure them we're working hard to try to deliver some good year-end events for them. But they are just about to cross the finish line here academically for us.
Thank you, because I've honestly lost track of the original schedule and hadn't quite realized that tomorrow would have been their last day. And I was also remembering that I had heard that the seniors' last day now wasn't until sometime in June, and that was just kind of confusing. So thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Sure.
Rick, if I could just add to that, I would say for our underclassmen, really the point of engagement is twofold. So the first is social emotional, and the second is academic. So the extent to which you're pushing your child to engage really comes down to those two factors. If you are feeling like your child is socially isolated and is not engaging with peers, then certainly for that reason, have them reach out to their counselors and check into the optional Zoom office hours. Similarly with academics, if they are struggling academically, have a question that they feel is not being answered, then it is worthwhile pushing your child. However, if your child is completing their work independently and feeling socially, emotionally connected, then there's less of a need to kind of push your child to engage.
Thank you, Katie. Liza?
Yeah, with all due respect, I think we need to encourage every child to engage, no matter what. That is our responsibility as educators, and to keep them engaged in school. And this is all frustrating for all of us. We all have a gazillion things going on, but we need these kids to keep school as a focus in their lives and to learn in however much they're learning. And especially with teenagers and what Libby's going through, I've gone through that with my own kids. And it's really important that we as parents and as a community try and keep these kids engaged as much as possible and be creative about it and tell them it's worth it. Get on, connect with your teacher, connect with your classmates. It's hard. They're going to be shy, especially teenagers. They're like, I don't want to be the only one there. But it's important that they make that connection. And that's why we're having this whole effort at this whole remote learning. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep our community going. We want to have good schools. We want them to have a good life. So any parent on this, any teacher, any staff, let's do this. Let's get them on. Let's make sure that they have a good rest of the year. We only have a couple weeks left. It's hard, but we've got to do it, and we're going to have to keep doing it. So I apologize, I'm getting emotional, but I really want to see people make an effort at this, as hard as it is. But we got to keep going, and we got to keep it fun, keep it creative. The teachers have been doing some fantastic videos to keep it fun. There are a lot of teachers who have already been online, and I've heard of, some are getting a lot of kids to click on and a couple aren't, but let's try it. Let's get them going. So that's my soapbox for tonight, but please, let's do this.
And Liza,
it'll make everybody, it'll be better for everyone.
If I can just jump in there for a minute, I want to be very clear from a school perspective that we absolutely have been encouraging our students. I'm not suggesting you're saying we're not. I want to be clear with the community about what our expectations are. We want to engage every student to the absolute extent possible during this remote learning. Our statistics tell us that the majority of our students are truly engaged. However, we cannot be, and this is where we have, that was to go way back to Carrie's question very early in this conversation, are we allowing for the social emotional health of our students? We are not forgetting that. So we are pushing as hard as we can. We are encouraging students to participate, but we will not do that to the detriment of students' mental health. I can't get inside, and this is what Jamie was getting to, we cannot get inside to the household. I don't know how many students are also watching their younger siblings or a child or a small child in the house. I don't know how many families have illness in the house. I do not know how many families are struggling with mental health in the house. So we have to be responsible to that. We absolutely will encourage and will continue to encourage full, absolute commitment to education and learning. And to the extent possible, we will be there for our students. I just want to be clear what the expectations of the district are.
Paul, I completely understand that everyone has their circumstances, and those are not the people that I'm encouraging. It's people that are maybe not putting in full effort. Because frankly, I've heard of some of that people are like, well, we'll get to it. Yes, my own family has gone through challenges during this coronavirus. I'm sure every single family here has. But I've also heard of others that aren't necessarily, engaging fully. And those are the people that my message is for, not the people that you were talking about. And I respect the staff who've reached out to those families that are challenged. I can't imagine playing that role. But it's the other side of the group that let's not let people who can participate slack off just because we're almost done.
That's it for me, Michelle.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. All right, well, thank you very much for that report. Appreciate, again, the work that went into it, the engagement of the faculty and the staff and the administrative team that put that all together. It's obviously, we're not gonna be able to satisfy everyone, but I do have the most confidence in this administrative team and in our faculty and our community and our parents to ensure that our kids are going to be okay when this is all over, right? This is a lot for me as a grown-up, right? For all of us as a grown-up, I think we've all sort of had enough. And, now we're moving into the next phase and we don't know what that's going to bring. So there's a lot of fingers crossed and a lot of thoughts and prayers. And but I just want people to know that there is also an awful lot of work going on, again, to Katie's point, behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. So I did just want to acknowledge all that hard work that everyone's doing, parents, students, teachers, administrators, everyone. So I do want to thank everyone for the work and the engagement. So thank you. All right, we are going to move on to item 6.2 on the agenda, which is to review a proposed section B of the Hingham Public Schools Policy Manual and act as appropriate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie. Can you give us a?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a second read. The policy subcommittee went over this with Dr. Austin and Pam King, who were very helpful. And this covers school committee legal authority and goals, along with policies governing the school committee operations, such as organization of the committee, school committee member code of ethics, advisory committees to the school committee, and policies governing our meetings, such as how the agenda is prepared, how notices are published, executive sessions. And finally, it covers the development and dissemination of policies. We didn't, just as with the previous section, we didn't make any huge changes to what the practice was. We just sort of brought it and made sure we had all the policies that were required by law, and that make sure that the district is aligned with best practices. So did anyone have any questions? No? Okay. If that's the case, Michelle, you're muted. I don't know.
Sorry. I don't see any hands raised or from the committee or, okay. So I think we're good. You want to?
Okay. I will make a motion to approve Section B of the New Hingham Public Schools Policy Manual and Form to be adopted once the committee approves all sections of the manual.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Liza. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve Section B. Ness?
Aye.
Thank you. Libby?
Aye.
Thank you. Liza?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. All right, that is Section B approved. Thank you. All right, item 6.3 is to review proposed Section C of the Hingham Public Schools Policy Manual and act as appropriate. That is in your packets. Item 6.3. So Carrie, I'll let you.
Similarly, this is a second read. This section covers general school administration, such as the responsibilities and evaluation of the superintendent, approval of handbooks, how actions can be taken in the absence of a policy, and the annual report submitted to the town, among others. Again, we worked with Dr. Austin and Pam King, as well as Jim Hardy, who is the Mass Association of School Committees field director, on these, and again, didn't make any huge changes, but made sure that we had all of the policies we were required to have and that it's best practices.
Great, thank you. Any questions on this? All right, seeing none, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion to approve Section C of the New Hingham Public Schools Policy Manual and Form to be adopted once the committee approves all sections of the manual.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Liza. Any discussion? All right, I'll take a roll call vote. Ness?
Aye.
Thank you. Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
Dr. Ed?
Aye.
Thank you. Carrie?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. All right. A, B, and C done. All right. Thank you very much to the policy committee. Item 6.4. This is a big one too. To receive an update on the school calendar for 2020 and 21 and act as appropriate. Dr. Austin, do you want to just give us a little refresher on
I would love to. I would love to. If you can indulge me, though, just for a second to say thank you to the policy committee. I think one thing goes without saying, they've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of policy over the last few weeks, and that is a major undertaking. And I'm having a hard time keeping up with them because they are an incredibly hardworking group, and they keep my feet to the fire. That's for sure as we keep moving forward. But I just want to put kudos on that. I don't think anybody realizes how much policy and how much reading and rereading and review and crossing out and editing happens. So thanks to Carrie and to Liza and to Libby, Pam for an amazing job. So thank you for doing that. And you're really making huge progress. We're over about a third of the way through, so I think we're getting there. Well done. Okay, thank you for just that second of indulgence. So we're going to do the receive an update of the school calendar. So the proposed calendar that I've given you calls for the start of school on August 31, 2020 for all students with the exception of kindergarten, which will start on September 2nd. That's a Wednesday. That is consistent with a staggered start schedule to previous years. It should also be noted, and I just want to make sure that people know this, that although we are counting September 14 on that calendar as a additional, what I'll call Patriots Day, which is the makeup holiday for this year on Patriots Day in April, as we're expecting the running of the Makeup Boston Marathon. However, I do want to call your attention, the legislature has not fully adopted that as of yet. So the governor has said that he is proposing that as a holiday. However, the legislature has not acted, but it's in the calendar, so everybody knows. If the legislature does not make that change or adopt the 14th as a state holiday, you will come back and you could make an adjustment if you need be at that. If need be at that. I would propose the calendar with the August 31 start be the final version that I offer to you. It's my recommended version to you. I know at our last school meeting, I think when we were discussing that more at length, I think we got 150 or so people on the school committee meeting. I know a lot of people have watched. I have not heard one negative to that. It doesn't mean that everybody would agree, but I've certainly not heard any outcry of people who are upset about starting on August 31st, even though I know this is a change from the norm. I will also say this is a 1 year, so that people are clear, this is a 1 year change. For the upcoming year, we do have a side letter of agreement with the association to start on August 31. So it's for 1 year only. If we were to do another year before Labor Day, start before Labor Day would have to require the association to agree and do another side letter at that time. But in the contract itself, it has always said that teachers do not start school before the Wednesday prior to Labor Day. Sorry, I'm getting my holidays mixed up on Wednesday. On Labor Day. So this is a 1 year special circumstances due to the extended closure we've had, as well as a very late Labor Day in 2020. So that's the calendar I have for you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the committee or comments from the committee first? Liza, yeah.
I have a question, and maybe Rick Swanson can answer this. High school fall athletics, can we make sure that they still start the week of the 24th and don't push back the week of the 17th for tryouts? Because I think for the getting into the week of the 17th is a week earlier than usual, and that might really conflict with people's still summer vacation plans. Where Rick, do you know anything about that?
I know there are a lot of ongoing discussions at the MIAA level looking ahead to the fall season, and there certainly is a great deal of uncertainty around fall sports, just as there's a great deal of uncertainty around the traditional reopening of school. But I would expect that many of the timelines will be adjusted for next year, and that it probably will be done in concert with other schools as well. But I'm making note of that concern. Certainly that's a legitimate concern about how early we'd be able to start if we're able to start at that point.
Can I just ask a question with that, Liza, just to follow up? Rick, and maybe you know this, I would assume, I'm new to Massachusetts, obviously people know that it is a set date by the MIAA. It doesn't go necessarily by our open, but it's a set date by the MIAA who determines the start date of all athletics.
That's correct. They do have authority over establishing, how early you can start in each of the different sports.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee or the public? All right, seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to vote on this? Carlos?
I'll move that we approve the updated school calendar for 2020-2021 as recommended by the superintendent, calling for the start of the school year to August 31st, 2020.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Was it Carrie?
Yeah, it was me.
All right. Any further discussion?
Right. Just, we really need to get this out to the community as soon as possible once we if we approve it.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Okay, so seeing no other comments, let's take a vote. Ness Carenti?
Aye.
Thank you. Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
Dr. Ed?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. All right, unanimous. School calendar approved for 2021. And then Dr. Austin, we will can we get this out to the community as early as tomorrow?
Yeah, we can post that. I believe it's ready to go. We've had it posted as well already, so we can just continue and we'll let the community know that this has been voted on. So
terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is it for unfinished business for tonight anyway. We're going to move on to new business. 7.1 is to discuss scheduling of the superintendent evaluation. So I'll just give a little background on this. It's hard to believe that it's already time to start thinking about Dr. Austin's evaluation. Also hard to believe that Dr. Austin has been here for not even 1 year yet.
Yeah.
We thought we'd throw it all at you in year one, Paul, so we could see how you handled it.
I'm looking forward to skating on year 2, maybe. I don't know. No, that would be nice.
Yes. Anyway, but one thing that had come up, so there's nothing in our policy, I think if I'm correct, to carry the policy, our policy doesn't have a date that we need to complete the evaluation of the superintendent. But Dr. Austin's contract does have a date that we had agreed to do his evaluation by June 30th. However, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees has sent out some new guidance on the on superintendent evaluations, and I can send this along to folks if they haven't seen it. But it's basically about the time, given everything that's going on with the school closures and COVID-19 and responses and recoveries and whatnot, they're sort of saying, hey, you can decide, work with your superintendent and decide what you want to do for timing. You can push it off later. Some are doing it in the summer, some are doing them even in the fall. We really need to rethink about what, do we want to still use the same goals do we still want to measure Dr. Austin against the same goals that we had already set up, knowing that many of them would have sort of halted, potentially progress might have halted on some of those mid-March. So there's some things to think about there. There's also, we should consider, and this is really probably also a policy issue to take up, considering the timing of the evaluation typically and who participates in it, given our election season. So folks will fall off the committee potentially before the evaluation is done, and you may have new members on the committee for the evaluation. So that piece of it is a policy consideration. So what I'd like to suggest tonight is that the executive board meet with Dr. Austin over the next couple of days and then come back to the committee with what our recommendation on what we should think about for Dr. Austin's first year evaluation. How do folks feel about that? I see, again, a thumbs up from Dr. Ed. Did anyone have thoughts on that? Is that okay with folks? I guess I'll just go around. Ness, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that, yes.
You got their thumbs up on the screen, Michelle.
Yeah,
I got a couple thumbs up on the screen. Livy's got a thumbs up. Dr. Ed showed me his thumbs up. Liza, you're good. Carlos and Carrie, I just committed you to a meeting. I hope you don't mind. All right, so that's great. All right, so we'll meet with Dr. Austin some point, maybe this week, if we can squeeze that in, and then report back to the committee at our next meeting on June 1st. All right, thank you. So item 7.2, speaking of meetings, is to discuss dates for summer meetings and act as appropriate. It's also hard to believe that summer is coming. I can't believe it's actually Memorial Day weekend coming up. not that weekends really matter anymore, but or they don't feel any different really. All right,
go
so sorry.
You can go to the beach.
Yes, you can go to the beach now.
Yes.
So given the new Recovery Response Advisory Committee work that'll be coming up, there will be no shortage of meetings this summer. And historically, we've really just had one meeting. We've usually just had like one meeting in July and one meeting in August for the committee. And I would suggest, just so everybody remembers, for upcoming meetings, we have June 1st, June 15th, and June 22nd, which is the town meeting. So I would propose a meeting in, like, again, just having one meeting in July and one meeting in August, given that we will also be having those recovery meetings during the summer as well. How do folks feel about that? Or are folks interested or nobody's interested in meeting more, but are folks feeling like we should meet maybe 3 times over the summer, given everything that's going on? So what are folks' thoughts on that? Carrie?
I mean, I think it makes sense to just do one, do 2 over the summer, and we can always add one if we need it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, because you're right, there will be a lot of meetings, and a lot of the work that's going to be done is done by this, the committee and the subcommittee. So,
okay, I think that's fair. All right. Does anybody disagree with that?
I would rather us schedule the meetings and cancel them, but schedule 2 a month, because there's so much going on, and even if this recovery group is meeting in subcommittees, that we're going to have to regroup and make sure everybody's on board with what's going on. And we don't know what budget situations are going to be either. So I'd rather put them on the calendar for 2 a month and then cancel if we don't need them. But instead of trying to get people back.
Yep.
So.
No, I'm with you.
I would agree with Liza. It's much easier to cancel than it is to reschedule a new meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say we do 3 scheduled meetings at least, just because not everybody's going to be on all the subcommittees. So it would be nice to get the group together to hear updates on the recovery area.
Okay. All right. And the community probably would like to hear more things as well over the summer. So especially as we get more information. I mean, Carlos, how about you? Sorry, Aaron.
They keep muting me, so if they can just leave that button alone, that would be great. I've been thinking here, so you have in mind that you meet on June 1st, is that right?
Yes, we have a next meeting on June 1st.
Well, why don't we push that to the 8th? Because then after the 8th, we'll be meeting again on the 22nd, correct?
Well, we're meeting on the 15th as well. So I think that's what the original calendar was. Am I wrong on that? I was looking at.
Can that be changed now? I mean, my proposal is that we meet on the 8th and then on the 22nd, perhaps.
Sorry, Michelle, the only thing I might throw in, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but the Community Outreach Subcommittee is meeting Wednesday to discuss a proposal by a new private school who would like to open effective July 1. And if you condense to one June meeting, I don't know that we'd be able to do that.
No, you're right.
So I would just put that in the back of your brain. Yeah.
Yes, no, thank you. I think that's why we have to have that June 1st meeting, Carlos, sorry.
Not a problem.
All right. So let's stick with the June calendar as is, and then all right. So let's see what we can come up with for dates. And sorry, folks on the phone, I know this is like watching paint dry, but July 6th, no. I'm assuming you want to stay with Mondays. So the option would be July. We could do like July 13th, 27th. And then August 10th.
Michelle.
And then, yeah.
We do have to have a meeting right after the election, though.
Yep. Well, the only thing is that Monday is the 4th of July holiday. July 6th, because it's...
If, Michelle, just to keep you aware, if we have our summer conference for superintendents, Jamie and I would be at a conference on the 13th of July.
Ah, all right.
And actually, I'm on a vacation the week after. I'm not going to be in that. So the 27th I could do, but I'm already planning to be out. So give the heads up on that.
All right. Does anybody post-election, is there a policy on how quickly we have to meet after that? I only asked because the election is pushed off to the 27th.
No,
So
but what if we met on July 8th? It's a Wednesday. But
yeah,
we don't have to meet on Mondays.
Yep, that's what I was just going to say. We could either do it like the 8th, because the only other way would do it would be to do it on the 29th, which would make
right.
Yeah.
I would be okay with that.
Which one, July 8th?
Yes.
Okay. Other folks?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that works.
Good.
All right. So July 8th. So Wednesday, July 8th at 7 p.m. Do you guys want? I potentially wouldn't be here. So Wednesday, July 8th at 7 p.m. That would be the first meeting of the new school committee. Okay. All right. So Wednesday, July 8th. Okay. And then try to move back to Mondays. Dr. Austin, how do you feel about July 20th? I don't know what your summer plans are for. I know you're at the conference the week before.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be in another state on that during that time of the 20th.
That's okay. All right.
So gone from the 17th to the 24th.
All right. What if we? Sorry. 17th to the 24th.
17th to the 24th. I'm supposed to be in Texas. Yes.
Okay. How about July 27th?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that one.
All right. So July 27th, again, 7 p.m. And then, so that's 2 in July. And then August 10th, another Monday. Yeah. All right.
Fine.
Yep. August 10th, 7 p.m. And then, all right, I guess, do we want to tentatively put down August 24th? That will be, it's another Monday night. Okay, let's put that on the calendar. And then, as people said, folks can change them if you want to delete one.
Is this the 24th is the first night or first day of orientation? Is that too much for the staff to have a meeting that week?
We generally try to stay away from the planning weeks leading into the opening school. So
no, that's fair. I get the wrong time up there. How about
maybe by then on the 10th we could then do the schedule for the rest, because maybe we'll know if we're even opening.
Right, you'll know by then.
Okay. All right. So do we want to leave those 3 meetings, the 8th, the 27th, and then August 10th, and then go from there? Okay. All right. Fair. Okay.
You could always do a Zoom meeting. I can Zoom in from another state.
We're allowed. If they allow us to maintain the remote participation.
That's right.
Okay. So, all right. Everyone in agreement on July 8th, Wednesday, 7 p.m., July 27th, which is Monday at 7 p.m., and August 10th, Monday at 7 p.m. Okay, great. All right. Any 48-hour items from anyone?
John, did you want to update them on the MSBA and talk about our authorization for the school building committee. Do you want to update them for that, or do that another time?
Yeah, no, I can mention. So we did. We submitted for the school building committee the composition of the committee, and we just got approved. So that was good news.
You want to speak up, John, please?
What's that? I didn't come out okay. So the MSBA, the school building committee application that we filed with them, they came back, asked a question, but they're happy with the composition of the committee. So that's a go. That was two of the big steps in this eligibility period have to do securing your financing and creating your building committee. So we have the two big ones all done now. And, now we'll be working on the educational profile and the enrollment study. So we're proceeding on schedule. Both of those are due at the end of June. So, it'll take a little of our focus now over the next couple of weeks. But my intention is to try to get those in early. I like to, if the due date's June 28th, I prefer to get them in at the beginning of the month so that we get the good news before. So everything's proceeding good.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right. Any other 48-hour items? All right. Hearing none. Let's move on to sort of subcommittee project reports. I'll just go around the Zoom. Ness, do you have anything?
Yeah, we have our first finance subcommittee meeting this Thursday at 10 a.m.
Excellent. Thank you. Libby?
Yeah, so I just would like to reiterate what Jamie said, that we have a community outreach meeting scheduled for this Wednesday at 1 o'clock to review the plans for Hingham Academy.
Great, thank you. All right. Liza?
I have a foster school council is meeting Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. via Zoom. So that should be good. Update. And the master plan committee is meeting May 20th and May 27th to continue our work.
Great, thank you. Dr. Ed?
No, all set.
You're good. All right, thank you. Carrie?
The policy subcommittee is meeting tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. and then with Jim Hardy from MASC on Tuesday, May 26th.
Awesome, thank you. Carlos?
Hingham High School Council met last month and will be meeting again tomorrow. They continue addressing the 2021 school improvement plan goals. And then long-range planning, we met last Monday. We approved all outstanding minutes at a very productive meeting. We also went over all the capital improvements that was done during the past year. And John and his team is preparing a report to provide to capital outlay, so that way they have it. And we will highlight every single penny that was spent as part of the $975,000. And that's pretty much it. As I mentioned, we should have one more meeting before Dr. Ed retire, so we can wrap it up the year.
We've got a couple. He's not getting ready. He's not getting off the hook very easily here. All right, sorry. Are you still there, Carlos?
That's pretty much it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have scheduled, Carrie and Dr. Ed and myself and Dr. Vinnis have scheduled a special ed subcommittee meeting on Wednesday at noon. So it will be we have a hard stop at 1 o'clock, but I'm thinking it'll be just like a 45-minute. Dr. Vinnis is going to give us an update on a little maybe more detail around the remote learning 2.0 as it relates to special education, and we'll see if there are any budget implications that we should be considering and advising the rest of the committee on. So it is Wednesday at noon via Zoom. And that is it for me. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session for the purposes of approval of minutes of the executive session on May 4th, 2020, discussing matters related to the HEA Unit A collective bargaining contract, discussing matters related to the HEA Unit A collective bargaining negotiations, all of which the public discussion of which may be detrimental to the committee's bargaining position, and to act as appropriate.
Can I get a second?
This is Carrie. I'll second.
Thank you, Carrie. All right. Roll call vote. Ness?
Aye.
Thank you. Libby?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. All right. Thank you, folks. We are adjourned from public session, and see everybody in 5 minutes at our next meeting. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your engagement. As always, have a good evening and stay well.
Thank you, everyone.